A dynamic home screen that gets updated with fresh stories through the day, a reading experience curated or designed specifically for you, 20% faster performance than before, and if you want to buy or renew your subscription, it couldn't get any easier. All of this in one place, your pocket. Dear listeners, the Ken's all-new app with a whole bunch of new features for iOS, Android, and iPad is now live. Click the link in the show notes to experience a radically new reading experience. Enjoy! Two weeks back, we at the Ken put out a survey on imposter syndrome. Since then, we have received over 115 responses from young professionals in the 18 to 25 age group. This survey was titled, "Are you good enough at your job?" You probably took the survey. I read and reviewed each and every response and called up over 30 people in the survey who consented to have a follow-up conversation with me. There was only one thing on my mind. What made so many of them click on a survey like this? And why do so many of them in the first 2 years deal with imposter syndrome? But when I made these calls, people told me all kinds of things. Some griped about how the survey wouldn't let them second-guess their answers.
Actually, when I was going through some of the options, I was confused. And I was surprised to find that there's no option, no way of editing your options or going back once you clicked on an option. So yeah, I just went through with it.
Some hope to actually find out from a 5-minute survey if they're good at their jobs or not.
I was hoping for it to be one of those BuzzFeed style surveys where they tell you at the end, give you a kind of rating, but no, it was not meant to be. It was a lot more reflective.
Some just wanted to confirm their worst insecurities about themselves.
So I've discussed my imposter syndrome with a few friends who happen to subscribe to the Ken, and they forwarded the link to me and I took it. I think I was looking to find out if I really am an imposter on some level, but yeah, that's why I took the survey.
Before the survey, I looked at imposter syndrome as something you get over. But after the survey, I'm pretty convinced that imposter thoughts can actually fuel your growth and help you get ahead too. Hello and welcome to the first 2 years. I am Akshay Chandrasekharan. For this episode, I will take you inside the minds of fascinating people, highly ambitious and top performers who all consider themselves imposters at work. I had underestimated how hard it is going to be to call up complete strangers and discuss some of their deepest and darkest insecurities. I had a lower success rate than a Bajaj Finance call center employee. People almost immediately said no. So hey, tell me about how you're constantly overworking yourself to make sure no one ever finds out that you're a fraud at work because you secretly believe that you have no real skills whatsoever. Isn't apparently a great conversation starter. And I get it. It's hard to not just reflect, but also admit to yourself and someone else. But so many of the respondents, all under 25, told us about how they overworked themselves to perfection, doubted themselves a lot, and really struggled to ask for help. All symptoms of imposter syndrome. So I just really wanted to know what goes on in their minds. I reached out to you after reading your response on the survey, right? I called you up to ask you if you wanted to speak with me on the podcast. And the first thing you said was I would normally say no, but you're now going to say yes. I'm glad you did, but why was your initial instinct to say no?
I don't know if I have anything remarkable or insightful to actually share over a podcast.
That's Ashwin. He's a 25-year-old product manager at Vadwani AI. He works on building healthcare products using artificial intelligence for tuberculosis. Ashwin was one of those people who gave me the chance to interview him.
I work in product management, And you work with many brilliant people from different fields, right? So you have people who've done PhDs and masters from really fancy universities, people who are doctors and have worked with the WHO as consultants, really talented engineers and designers. And when you actually build projects, they each have something tangible they can point to and really own. But when you work in product, you are generally responsible for the whole thing, generally responsible for defining and mastering the problem well. But you often don't have many tangible artifacts or products you can point to. And that was something that would bother me for a long time.
This was the root cause of Ashwin's imposter syndrome. What am I really doing? How valuable is my contribution compared to the doctors and engineers and designers on my team? What is my outcome? But most of us, like Ashwin, work in jobs in which our work is intertwined with others a lot. You can never fully take credit for any outcome because you never fully contributed to anything. It's all a collective effort.
And besides, I think the role sort of requires you to step back and let the team lead, or let the team take credit for everything that's working well. And it requires you to not interfere in the minutiae of how things actually happen, right? So it's a very weird line of work, I think, that I think leads to a lot of imposter syndrome for a lot of people, I think, here.
I think journalist Derek Thompson said it the best. The whiter the collar, the more invisible the product. It's not just Ashwin though. Millions of jobs are faced with similar problems. For instance, I spoke to a 24-year-old junior consultant who had also taken the survey. Let's call her Shrishti, because she didn't want to reveal her name or where exactly she works. But as a consultant, her work was to go into companies and tell CEOs and CHROs and board members what they must be doing differently. She couldn't help but think, what do I know to give advice? Are my suggestions even good enough? It really put her confidence to the test.
Like most of them, when you talk to them, you get the sense that they know what they're doing inside out and beyond that. And then there's me, straight out of college, being like, hey, maybe, you should do this, or hey, maybe this is how your team and you could work better, or hey, these are the areas you should like focus on more, or, do less of. So yeah, all the time I feel like, am I really qualified to be doing any of this? Am I going to be taken seriously by any of them?
All these stories could just sound like self-doubt and insecurities that most young professionals starting out typically face. But what differs from self-doubt and insecurity and what we are calling imposter syndrome is the other's focus. Both Ashwin and Shrishti really think their peers and colleagues, all talented and successful people, are overestimating their abilities. This is where the discrepancy comes from. It's when other people are able to place their confidence in you, something that you don't believe about yourself.
The imposter syndrome, or just me questioning myself, kicks in when people are like, hey, but we really learned this from you. And I'm like, no, you didn't. Like, it's a very simple thing. Like, you could have figured it out on your own. Like, I didn't add any value to this at all. So I think even in relationships, you're like constantly thinking about what value are you really adding to these accomplished people and these experienced people. Yeah.
When you receive praise or recognition for your work publicly, how does it make you feel? This was one of the questions we had asked in the survey. The options were: chalk it up to a one-off event. Number 2, detach yourself from it mentally. Number 3, secretly think of ways only you know you could have done better. And 4, feel proud of the achievement, and the least selected option of all. 82% of the respondents chalked it up to fluke or detached themselves from it and secretly worried if it's not good enough. Shrishti recalled the first time she experienced imposter syndrome. It was during COVID when she graduated and started looking for jobs when it really hit her. At the time, companies were rescinding offers and freezing hiring altogether. To be faced with so much uncertainty, rejections after rejections, it's hard not to feel like you're not good enough. It can make you question your abilities. Maybe my remote education didn't prepare me for the real world. Maybe my exams weren't as competitive enough and aren't an accurate reflection of my abilities. Maybe I don't have the right kind of social skills because I didn't have the same experiences. 7 in 10 Gen Z workers, like Srishti, who were applying to entry-level jobs at companies, all experienced severe imposter syndrome at the time. It's what a LinkedIn report that came out in 2021 says. That feeling, Srishti says, has continued to stay with her.
I know I joined the workforce during COVID, so did most of my friends. I don't know if it comes from there, like that just overall overarching sense of uncertainty, when is all of this gonna like go up in flames. I think you're just living in that doubt and anxiety all the time, at least for me. That's one of the explanations I give to myself.
Soon after, she did manage to find a great job, but it wasn't a gratifying victory.
I know even when each of us got a job, like we didn't really celebrate the way we would have had it sort of not been for COVID, because you also feel that sense of this really terrible thing is happening, and what am I chasing? Am I chasing just a high paying job? Do I really need this? Can I do something more? So I think just that whole thing becomes muted, like even the celebration becomes muted post all that dread that one has gone through.
Bagging your first job is a huge milestone, but many who experienced imposter syndrome couldn't really celebrate their wins, and they attached it to circumstances and COVID. Even now, you can see the after effects of doing that.
But they gave me the top rating. Outstanding.
But Ashwin gave himself a 7 on the survey.
So I think most moments at work, just the kind of feedback I've gotten is fairly positive. So I think if you were asking people if you were doing sort of a 360 about me, I would like to believe the rating would be higher.
And it was, because Shrishti gave herself a 6 on 10 on the survey despite her organization declaring her as one of the top performers. How could it be that even after so much proven success, Shrishti and Ashwin could feel imposter syndrome? Shrishti says it's what made the survey-taking process a really difficult one. In a 2-hour cab ride to the airport, while traveling for work and thinking of work, Shrishti was ruminating about her imposter syndrome with the survey.
I know I paused in between and sort of did the Wordle or something and came back to it because I didn't, you don't want to think about all these things all the time. It does take a toll on you that if every day in and out you're kind of thinking, am I good enough? Am I good enough to have imposter syndrome? It becomes really meta that way. So I know I took a break, did a couple of other things and then came back to it and I was like, I should finish it. Since I've started it, I should hit submit and just, I don't know what data point it'll be, but yeah.
If imposter syndrome can be seen through the framework of competence and confidence, it's when your competence is probably high, but your confidence is low. People who have frequent imposter thoughts prefer to rather be that over being high on confidence, but an empty vessel. It's what makes them always think of ways to get better and not resign themselves to complacency. Coming up, a path-breaking study by Wasima Tufik from MIT Sloan that went on to prove that small doses of imposter syndrome may actually be good for you. Hi, this is Akshay again, taking a little break to tell you about our most recent survey. You've been listening to me break down our survey about imposter syndrome at work so far. This was a survey that really helped me find interesting insights and stories from listeners like you. We want to do this for every episode going forward. Co-create episodes with you. Surveys also give me a chance to bring you on the podcast. So our latest survey is about great work friendships. Do you have a work bestie? Well, when I entered my first job in a new city, I quickly sought out friendships in my colleagues. Eventually, my colleagues became friends and work became fun. As tricky as they may be, these friendships have had a deep impact on my work, life, and even my career. I know a lot of people are in the same boat as me. If you have a work friend that makes your days at the office brighter, we want to hear your story. Click on the link in the show notes right at the end to fill out our survey. It won't take you longer than 10 minutes. Thanks for your time. Back to the episode now.
So when I converted my internship, I did this weird thing where I sat with several colleagues and managers, to try and get a sense of what they've done in the company and what their struggles have been, what their learnings have been, right? And a recurring theme was again the imposter syndrome people felt from the role. Like it didn't matter how senior you were, how accomplished you were on paper, but people just feel that way.
Did that make you feel better to know that even the most experienced, according to you, in your eyes, uh, far more accomplished people were also in the same boat as you?
No, it made me feel worse because it taught me that I would have to struggle with this for a long, long time.
Oh, yeah, fair enough. Forgot about that for a second. Yeah,
sorry.
like that, it doesn't go away.
Yeah, pretty much.
Ashwin may be onto something because there is a whole body of research that says imposter syndrome doesn't truly go away. It morphs into something different at different points in time. People think you reach a certain age in your career and gather a certain amount of experience, and suddenly you feel confident and secure. But that's simply not true. Highly successful and ambitious people always carry imposter thoughts with them through the rest of their careers. It starts with, I'm not good enough. Then it turns into, I'm not sure if I'm ready for these new responsibilities. And then it becomes, how do I consistently earn my greatness?
Yeah. So, like I said, my background involves a 2-year gap because of my civil services prep. And I had to join the company as an intern and work my way up, right? So, I had no prior background in AIML or tuberculosis or working in the development sector. So, all I had really was feedback to try and implement to get better. So, it's something I've been doing since day one, really.
People with imposter syndrome are often rated as better collaborators. Ashwin thinks the reason behind his rapid growth in his company is because he was always open to being wrong. And imposter syndrome allowed him to do that. In fact, 30% of the survey respondents also attested to this. All of them said that they readily accept negative feedback over praise or recognition because they're constantly thinking of ways on how to get better.
I mean, I really think about what went wrong, and I try to throw myself at work, right? So when things don't go well, I really obsess over problems, and if it's really related to my imposter syndrome, it probably sort of validates that fear I have, right? So I tend to worry a lot about it, and I tend to try to do a lot better the next time.
When we think of imposter syndrome as a uniformly bad thing, you kind of think of it as a problem that you want to eliminate. Basima Tufik, a professor at MIT Sloan, is suggesting with her work that maybe it's about how to channel these thoughts productively and not eliminate them entirely. A lot of people who are successful deal with a lot of imposter syndrome, which actually fuels their success instead of letting it burn them. Basima has studied imposter thoughts among investment professionals, medical professionals, and military cadets. She finds an outcome that's pretty much the opposite of what their imposter thoughts would have them believe. People with imposter thoughts actually report higher levels of expertise and mastery. Those imposter thoughts actually helps them focus more on others. For example, when medical students have those insecurities, they make better eye contact with their patients and listen more carefully to them, and they don't think they have all the answers. This helps them fare better than someone who prescribes what they believe is the right line of treatment without paying attention to the patient's needs. The focus on others, their feedback, their alertness to the change in environment allows them the empathy and the opportunity to course correct and switch paths when things aren't going according to the plan. Imposter syndrome itself is not the problem. If you start to look at it as a strategic advantage and start recognizing the benefits you may be experiencing because of it, it might just help you keep it in check.
Like, I just didn't get to meet any women leaders, and I know that gave me really like a crisis of identity, because I was like, hey, like, why am I not seeing people like myself who've who just look like me, have had like similar journeys, have similar anxieties. So like the inverse of that, there's so many men, right? And you see them being, like I said, very confident, very self-assured, very well adjusted into things. And they really have the sense that, they belong where they do. Whereas women just, like I said, questioning.
I think this is where you stop telling women that they have imposter syndrome.
Yeah.
Because they don't have imposter syndrome. They're just looking at the world for what it is. Do not be able to see a lot of women in top brass and thinking whether you can get there or not.
Yeah.
It's not imposter syndrome, right? It's just observation of reality.
Yeah.
So I think some of the thoughts we have are not exactly imposter syndrome. It's just a consequences of the way workplaces are now. Like, it's improving, but it's still a reality, right?
Exactly.
So I think this is the part where we are like, it's not me, it's you. This episode was written and hosted by me, Aksha Chandrasekharan, produced by Anushka Mukherjee. The survey on imposter syndrome was also jointly designed by Anushka and I. Finally, audio engineering by Rajiv CN. Thank you and see you next time.